here if you want to get straight into the video. I always start these stories off about my childhood, right? Well, I was technically a preteen in the story, so still a child. Anyway, it's late 2016 and my mom gives me a genius idea. She says that the NES Classic is coming out and tells me stories about how she and her brothers used to play the original back in the 80s. She asked me if I'd want it since it was only $60 and I'm excited, so I said yes. Luckily, the NES Classic was released in the States on November 11th, Veterans Day, so my mom and I had the day off work and school. We woke up early, went to the mall, walked into a Target, and see a line backed up to the front door. There are a limited amount of NES Classics, so we're already sure we're not going to be able to get one. A man appears behind us and tells us that only him and another guy are waiting for the GameStop to open, and that we'd probably be able to get one if we waited with them. With nothing better to do all day, we wait 3 hours to get it and immediately go home afterwards. One of the games on the NES Classic was the original Metroid, the first game in the series that spawned many sequels. I gotta be honest, I wasn't really a fan at first. I was more interested in Kirby, Punch-Out, and Mega Man 2. Metroid is a game that I didn't really get into until last year. So, why did I tell a story with absolutely no payoff? Maybe I just like to talk a lot. Here, I'll do it again. I played Metroid Fusion while living in a dorm on campus, playing on a mod at PS Vita. Unfortunately, that Vita ended up in a grave just a few short weeks after my boyfriend modded it due to reasons. I was devastated and I didn't have the will to touch any of the games I played on, including Metroid Fusion. It wasn't until very recently this year, and when I say recently, I mean a few days before writing the script, that I played Metroid Zero Mission using an emulator on Steam Deck and got back into Metroid. And as I'm writing the script now, I'm playing Metroid Fusion again. I'll most likely be done by the time this video is released. So, I may or may not have Metroid brain rot now. And knowing my newfound obsession, my boyfriend gave me the idea to play Metroid Dread on his Switch. I'd only seen him play a little bit before, so it'd be completely fresh to me, and I was open to the idea. Luckily for me, that was a great idea. What's up? It's Cat Lover. Sorry, didn't mean to talk your ear off. Actually, I totally did. Let's jump right in. Metroid, originally released in 1986, has been around for nearly 40 years. It remains very popular, though it's not releasing as many games as it used to. It's also not nearly as popular as gaming giants such as Mario and Zelda, but die-hard Nintendo fans know better. I wasn't really alive in the 80s, and I sadly didn't become a Metroid fan until somewhat recently. Good news for me though, I have a ton of Metroid games to discover and play. Dread is one of those games. The game is great, it has a ton of content that I adore, and I had a ton of fun playing it. It really is a special title, and I might not understand everything that happens in it because I'm not playing games according to the story's chronological order, but I can still appreciate it. Samus is as badass as ever, and this game showed me just how much emotion she has despite being in her suit for like the entirety of the game. Dread has beautiful graphics, an amazing art style, tough bosses, and like all other Metroid games, focuses on exploration. Fine by me. Ready for a discussion? Ready to see how bad I am at the game? Let's go! Metroid games pride themselves on being played in a non-linear style, putting emphasis on exploration and using every ability in your arsenal to progress further. Using your imagination and imagining how to progress when you're seemingly stuck is the appeal to these games, and I see it. Metroid is very fun when I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off wondering what to do, and figuring out that what I'm supposed to do is actually really obvious. The game refusing to hold your hand is honestly a good part about it, but I gotta admit I got lost or confused a lot. Sure, I'm not the biggest fan of games that spoon-feed you things about the main objective, but embarrassingly enough, that's kind of what I need. Metroid games usually have you unlock abilities throughout the game, such as the Morph Ball, Wide Beam, Spider Magnet, you name it. All are essential to making it through the game, and it's the way a game like Metroid is meant to be. Some abilities use up something called an Aeon Gauge, though it only needs to be refilled with a bit of time. See, Metroid games like making you vulnerable at the beginning of basically every game, stripping you of every ability imaginable and leaving you with a less than satisfactory suit of armor. Wouldn't be surprised if Samus is always mad as hell that she has to basically start all over every mission she's on. Can't be a good feeling. But I do understand why this is the case from a gameplay perspective. Being OP, like this, and blasting your way through all enemies as soon as the game starts wouldn't be fun. Building up your abilities, aka your power, and feeling like you earned it is a great, almost euphoric feeling. There are different ways to get your abilities or power-ups back. Finding Chozo statues, defeating enemy robots, or searching certain Chozo statue rooms. You anticipate getting these abilities back, and prepare to use them in newer, more hazardous situations. This includes what enemies to use these abilities on, even if it won't directly kill them. There are all kinds of biological or robotic life forms around the game, all of them taking damage in different ways. Biological life forms take damage from regular beams and charge beams, while robotic ones only take damage from missiles and tend to take more damage until you earn the proper beam to make life easier. The player is able to parry attacks from enemies that are projectile-based, enabling a counterattack afterwards. You can also use the same parry move to slightly stun enemies, making it easier to kill them. The X-Parasites are back on their mimicking shit. Except this time, they make the enemies they're mimicking a lot bigger, faster, stronger, and more aggressive. And worst of all, hideous. Amazing. But killing them is satisfying. The only enemies you cannot kill are the EMMI, robotic enemies that are indestructible and invulnerable to basically every single ability in your possession. They are only able to be killed by special, unique beams that are one-time use only. But due to a later section in this video, we'll talk more about the EMMI later on. I definitely have some words for them. Either way, Metroid Dread is very much like every other Metroid game, except fully 2D unlike the Prime games. The controls may take some getting used to, especially in tense situations. Despite knowing how the controls work, I still find myself hitting the wrong buttons and taking unnecessary damage because of it. Or just looking overall stupid. Talk about embarrassing. After playing the game for a while though, the player should become accustomed to the game and how it plays. If you're good at the game, which I wasn't. Playing other Metroid games, especially Fusion with how tense it can be before this one, will definitely increase comfortability. Fusion is very similar to how Dread is, from the extremely hostile environment and low chance of survival gnawing at you in both games. You feel vulnerable and weak, much like how the story emphasizes how you should feel. Playing the game, upgrading your suit and abilities is almost cathartic, and the game does well at making you recognize how far you've come. It's how Metroid has always been, and Dread does that justice. On to the level design. Due to Dread being 2D, it's not as difficult to navigate as it would be if it were 3D. The mechanics and abilities are integral factors in how the level design seems or feels. Not having certain abilities can make levels feel more hostile or confusing, and it's how the player should feel, especially when you're being hunted down by EMMI. Not having your abilities not only makes you weak and susceptible to significant damage, but also having the level kind of work against you. It can feel like even the level is rejecting you at your current power level. An almost unwelcoming feeling. It's not like you're constantly running from death or anything. Like basically every Metroid game, there are rooms with extreme temperatures which you can't go into without taking damage unless you have the appropriate suit for it. The only other rooms this hostile are areas where EMMI are located, and due to how dangerous they are, they're the only enemy you'll have to worry about in these areas until you find a special beam to kill them. This too is a very hostile area, with the level almost changing in color and overall design. These areas are much more maze-like and have a certain atmosphere that makes you recognize the danger you're in instantly. It's an effective way of making you shit bricks before you've even seen the EMMI. But again, more about them later. Sorry, I feel like I'm teasing you. The levels throughout the game always have extras around for you to find, whether that be energy tanks or missile tanks. This enables you to increase your HP or missile count, and trust me, you'll need them if you want to make it through this game without getting beaten to a bloody pulp. The levels are either full of organic life or completely devoid of any life and are machine-like. Water also plays a role in the level design, as draining some sections are essential to move forward. These watery areas can also be deadly when in an EMMI area. In a regular area, it only works as a nuisance. I like how well connected everything feels in Metroid. Every problem has a solution, and there are many things you look at that make you go, oh, well I can always come back later when I have that ability. It feels good to finally figure out what you're supposed to do to progress. The views exposing where you are breathtaking at times, and it really helps solidify what kind of environment you're in. The gameplay mechanics only feel so much better because the level design have a lot of thought put into it. Now, we're ready to talk about the bosses. I'm gonna go ahead and be honest with you and tell you that I sucked balls at these bosses. After playing back-to-back Metroid games, I wasn't accustomed to having to remember much or pay too much attention to the things going on around me. Here, that's pretty much essential. They make you earn the title of most fearsome warrior in the galaxy. The bosses always have patterns to follow, and sure, you may get killed a lot, but it's fair. It's fun. But you'll die a lot if you play recklessly like I do. I do like the addition of parrying in boss fights, as a cool cutscene appears if the parry is successful. It's always a treat to see how aggressive and ferocious Samus can be with them, considering they're trying to kill her for no good reason. Some bosses are easier than others, of course, while others are, let's just say really hard. One boss in particular that gave me a run for my money was the Raven Beak boss, and after you're done with one phase, you're on to the next. After getting through his first phase, I celebrated, not realizing just how much more work I had to do. I wonder if that's how Samus felt, not having the edge in a fight this time around. And let's just say she's not too happy about it. These bosses really do make you feel like a menace, especially later on with how many abilities you have at your disposal. You work hard, you're rewarded, but it just means you'll have to work harder on the next boss. It's pretty invigorating to struggle so hard on a boss at first and learn so much about it that it doesn't feel like much of a threat anymore. That's how bosses should be, especially when you're in an environment full of peril. It makes sense for these bosses to be difficult. With how slow I picked things up, the bosses were pretty hard for me, but I still found them fun. I never felt screwed over, and I loved every painful moment of them. Now, let's talk about the story. I wasn't expecting the story to be anything great, but I was pleasantly surprised. The Metroid games I played beforehand had a show-don't-tell kind of thing going on, and I'd say this game is similar with some exceptions. I'll try my best to keep it brief. Okay, so editor's note, this is not going to be brief. Skip here if you want me to analyze. Spoilers, of course, but I don't want to go on an exposition monologue and get brutally murdered like Quiet Robe. Let's start off. The Galactic Federation has set evidence that exposes the X-Parasite, an insanely dangerous organism surviving on the planet ZDR. They send 7 extraplanetary multiform mobile identifiers, aka EMMI, to check it out, only to see that they stop responding soon after they arrived on the planet. So, in turn, the Federation sends our well-known Samus Aran to investigate. While underground, Samus encounters Ravenbeak, a Chozo warrior who destroys the exit and beats her ass before stripping her of her suit and most of its abilities. With the help of her ship's computer, Adam, she recognizes that she must make it to the surface and leave. Samus is constantly attacked by the EMMI and is only able to defeat them using the EMMI blaster, which temporarily goes offline after killing one EMMI. It can only be brought back online by defeating a weird mother brain copycat. Later on, she's attacked by an EMMI, but is saved by another Chozo who disengages the EMMI. The Chozo, Quiet Robe, explains some things, yada yada yada. Ravenbeak is the leader of the Makan tribe who wanted to use the Metroids to conquer the universe. They slaughter Quiet Robe's tribe, the Toha, who planned on eradicating the planet the Metroids resided on when they got too dangerous, and only left him alive so he could control the Metroids. This plan would have worked if Samus had eradicated every single one, except for our lone baby. But I think we all know what happened to it. Ravenbeak's squad of men is wiped out by the X-Parasite, and with no more Metroids, the natural predator of the X and the only reason why the Toha made them, he's stuck. But since Samus is now the only one alive with Metroid DNA, Ravenbeak lured her to ZDR to extract the Metroid DNA in her body using the EMMI. Right after helping Samus in expositioning, he's killed by one of Ravenbeak's robotic assassins. Right after, an X-Parasite resurrects Quiet Robe's corpse and puts the EMMI back online. Let's fast forward. Samus is unlocking more for Metroid powers as she siphons energy out of the EMMI. When she confronts Ravenbeak, who had hacked Adam and been masquerading as him the whole time, he explains to her that he only spared her so she would unlock her true Metroid form so he could clone an army of her. He also reveals that he thinks of her like a daughter due to Samus being infused with Chozo DNA, his specifically. They fight. Samus isn't nearly strong enough to kill him, but she always finds a way. To put it lightly, she fucks him up. She unlocks her true Metroid form and proceeds to latch onto his face, draining him and the ship of its power, causing it to fall out of the sky into ZDR. Ravenbeak is surprisingly still alive and is infected by an X, is transformed into a giant monstrosity, but Samus says nah and blasts him to Kingdom Come. The planet is set to self-destruct, how creative of Metroid, and she nearly doesn't escape because her Metroid powers are draining everything around her, including her ship. An X-possessing Quiet Robe appears and lets itself be absorbed by her, neutralizing her Metroid powers and allowing her to leave right before the planet explodes. I assume either Quiet Robe can control the X, or I actually don't know. Woo! Finally done with that, holy shit. Yeah, sorry about that, but I feel like everyone should know just how essential knowing the story is to properly understand Samus' character. In general, she has a lot of emotions in this game, much more so than we've ever seen, and all we've ever seen are her eyes. She's quite aggressive in this game, completely bitching enemies hundreds of times larger than her. It's like the most dangerous thing to do is to slightly annoy Samus. We see how little effort she gives in fighting Kraid, and she still beat his ass. I guess because it's a regular occurrence to her. But let's talk about her meeting with Quiet Robe. She's more or less friendly to him, immediately lowering her weapon when she realizes he's not a threat. And no, she doesn't go, "Quiet Robe, no!" when he's killed, like in Metal Gear or something. You can tell she's angry. I can imagine she was just as mad as I was that his only purpose was to puppet a long-ass exposition piece just to get killed moments later. Her speaking was a shock to me though, but I imagine it's because Quiet Robe is the only one worth speaking to. Just to mention Ravenbeak's assassins a bit, I'll be honest, if I was ordered to hunt down Samus Aran, you know, the woman who single-handedly wiped out alien races and destroyed several planets, I'd quit on the spot, robot or not. Remember how I said Samus isn't getting paid nearly enough to do her job? Yeah, the only thing worse than doing her job is being someone who needs to get in her way and threaten her in literally any way at all. She'll give you a very rude awakening. And finally, on to how she is with Ravenbeak. Sure, he's rocking her ship for a good portion of the fight, but karma hits him, and it hits him hard. Think about it. Every single bad thing that's happened to Samus and the people around her, except for her parents being murdered, was indirectly caused by Ravenbeak's lust for power. He's the one that wiped out the Toha tribe, and if he hadn't sought power so badly, Samus and the people around her wouldn't have had to suffer. The blood may not directly be on his hands, but he's within her reach, and she's pissed. Enraged. I would be too if the reason why I'm constantly experiencing pain and trauma was calling me daughter just because I have some of his DNA in my body. After dealing with the fight that was Ravenbeak, I was ecstatic to see her finally beat his ass.
Fucking bitch! Yeah, get his ass, fucking pussy! Try the fuck again, bitch! Try the fuck again!
Complete, uncontrollable, unfiltered rage is a powerful, terrifying range of emotions that I love to see in stories, especially from usually calm characters like Samus. I mean, she's the one who really deserves to be in those lackluster female rage videos on TikTok. Someone said that she's a female Doom guy, but I'd say it's more appropriate to state that he's a male version of her. Samus' characterization in Dread is my favorite depiction of her so far, and I don't think that'll change. She's not a perfect, calm, or cold, unfeeling warrior, but still very much human despite having very diverse genes. She feels things: fear, shock, sadness, and anger, and we don't need a million words from her to see that. She's not just a warrior, but one with emotions and passions just like any other human. I assume that all the overwhelming feelings of sadness, despair, and confusion she's experienced throughout her life culminated into desperate wrath. It's a good look at her, not gonna lie. Speaking of looks, you don't see her out of her suit at all, and I remember being a bit sad that we couldn't see all of her, but the suit is an integral part of her. She's covered, relatively safe, but not invincible. The Metroid suit is also pretty badass with how scaly and spiky it is. The colors also resemble the now extinct Metroids, and I'm all for not so subtle symbolism. I wish we got to see her human form and how she changed physically rather than just her suit, but like I said, it's a part of her and it's cool as hell, so it'll do. Blasting through anything and everything after being so vulnerable the whole game is like a dream come true. This version of her suit is definitely the best by far. Off note, but she's gotta be pretty goddamn strong to carry what, like 100 pounds of armor and still be agile? And I can't even get out of bed sometimes, jeez. To conclude, I absolutely loved her character here, and I hope we get to see more depictions like this in the future. Now, we can talk about the art and animation for this game. This section is only here so I could gush about how beautiful this game looks. The art style and animation in this game are phenomenally done. It's slick, clean, amazing to look at, and is one of the better looking Switch games. Despite only being able to see her eyes, Samus is very reactive, and the scenes she's animated in detail her emotions so well it's almost scary. Her movement and body language and cutscenes indicates the kind of person she is. She's very conservative of her energy, not giving a threat more effort than they're worth, and is cautious without being overly aggressive or violent. They say the eyes are the gateway into the soul, and I love seeing Samus' eyes in cutscenes. It gave me the feeling that she's very emotional despite what a lot of people think of her. In this game, she expresses annoyance, irritability, confusion, and rage, and it actually gives her a character. Sure, she's still mostly a mystery, but I liked seeing her like this. In regards to the animation, I know for a fact that a shit ton of effort went into it. It's gorgeous to watch, almost like you're watching a fully animated Metroid movie. Don't get me wrong, I love the pixel art in Metroid Zero Mission and Fusion. Going from that to high quality animated cutscenes was a trip. Everything had love and thought put into it, from the enemy designs to the environment and the like. It may not be as bright or as vibrant as the Metroid games on Game Boy Advance, but I still find it very pleasing to look at. The dull, more lifeless colors mix with the bright ones pretty well, and adds diversity to the overall look of the game. It's really nice to see a modern Metroid game, as I've only really been focusing on the old ones, and I've gotta say, I'm pretty happy with what I've seen. But it didn't surprise me in the least though. Now, for the moment you've been waiting for, I'm gonna talk about the EMMI. They deserve their own section. This game legitimately could be a goddamn horror game. If I played this or Fusion as a child, I'd probably be terrified, shaking in my boots. Because that's exactly how I felt when I played it at 20 years old. So, now let's time to talk about the EMMI. I've already explained what the EMMI do in regards to the story, but I didn't mention how it affects gameplay or the overall tone of the game. The 7 EMMI you'll come across have their designated locations and cannot leave them, and the cutscenes before you face them for the first time, you'll see how they operate. You'll see what it's able to do to you and how it'll hunt you down. Depending on the type of EMMI, they will have differing abilities meant to counter you. It's absolutely terrifying to barely survive one EMMI only for the next to be more capable, so to say. How bad could it possibly be, you may ask? And I'll answer. One EMMI is extremely quick. One can see through walls that can shock you. One can freeze you. And there's no way to deal with them other than running from them. The music when you enter the EMMI areas is nerve-wracking, like you can get caught at any time. The environment is dull, mysterious, unwelcoming, and eerily calm, devoid of any other organic life forms or giant robots. As soon as you enter an EMMI area, you know based on how cold your blood feels running through your veins. And because EMMI areas have unique entrances and exits, but let me be dramatic so I can make my point. Each EMMI is capable of sensing your movement and investigating where you made the noise. Running around recklessly can lead to you being found and dealt with, so to speak. And when I say that, I mean Sam is getting skewered. Even using your abilities as much as you can leaves you vulnerable. You really have to use the ones you receive wisely, whether you choose to use the Phantom Cloak to sneak around or the Flash Shift to quickly maneuver around the EMMI and avoid being grabbed. And even then, it doesn't always guarantee escape. The Phantom Cloak decreases movement speed and jumping height. The level layout may not be good to use Flash Shift, and both use up a gauge. Hit and grab results in a bit of a quick time event where Samus can stun the EMMI and escape certain death. It's extremely difficult, it can be random at times, so accurately abusing the small window of time is more unlikely than it is likely. Failing this QTE ends with our hero becoming a corpse quite quickly. And I'm surprised to see something so genuinely terrifying and graphic in a Nintendo game. I mean, there's absolutely no blood or gore, but there doesn't need to be. Dread is its own kind of horror, and it doesn't need unnecessary violence to get its point across. The game heavily emphasizes your helplessness and vulnerability. There's nothing you can do until you're given permission to do something. Your newfound power used to destroy the EMMI is temporary, fleeting. Even when you have this unique power, you feel nervous you'll mess up. It's not until they're completely defeated and out of commission that you feel safe. But I will say that with each encounter with new abilities, sure, you can't kill them, but you can better avoid them. It becomes a bit easier to do towards the end of the game. For the last EMMI, you can just absorb it. It's pretty awesome, I can't lie. I'd kill to see a Metroid Dread movie with the EMMI as a secondary antagonist like in the game, but even if I do commit capital murder, I won't be seeing my dreams come to fruition. EMMI, you are terrifying, disturbing, frustrating, and painful, but I love your addition to the game. Just saying. Now, let's wrap it up. Metroid Dread is a game with a lot to offer. It can be tough or make you scratch your head in confusion, but everything is worth the effort. The game is so fun while also being the right amount of difficult. Maybe it's a bit harder than I anticipated since I kinda suck at Metroid games, and most games for that matter, but I loved everything in this game. The gameplay is both simple and complex, with many secrets to be found, sometimes even accidentally. The game's level design is creative yet the right amount of mysterious. Bosses can be as hard as Kraid's nails, but are all fair and satisfying to beat. The story is well done, and I found myself itching to learn more about what was going on. The art is superb, and I found myself enamored by it like a little kid. The game was scarier than a lot of horror games I've played, and leagues more bearable than them as well. Overall, Metroid Dread is a must-play if you're into the series or looking to get into it. I totally recommend it. You know, I'm kind of pissed at myself for not getting into Metroid sooner. I could have had Peak sitting in my lap this entire time, and I was being stubborn as hell. I'm really glad I was able to experience the Metroid games I've played, especially this one. This only makes me more excited for what Metroid has in store for the future and how amazing it'll be to finally get some new content. What do you think about the game or this video? I'd love to know in the comments. I'm Cat Lover, it's been real. Peace.